as we've done it a couple of times, has been very beneficial to hear from former alumni, their overall experience on campus, a little bit of their experiences, a little bit of their post-college experiences, and anything that really can be a takeaway for a group of young men that at one point you were sitting exactly where they were, maybe not behind a computer on a Zoom call talking to someone else, but certainly someone in your life has impacted you with some kind of advice along the way. And that's really what we're trying to do in this webinars, is give the guys some context, someone that's relatable to them, someone that's obviously climbed up through his career channels, and then maybe our boys can have a takeaway, and then eventually maybe even build a relationship that could be mutually beneficial to our alumni base and certainly for them and their family. So I want to welcome to our group. The guys have had a small introduction. We always ask the guys to research who we are that we're talking to. But Vlad, I'll let you introduce yourself. I think the guest typically does a better job introducing themselves. So I'll give you an opportunity to chat, and then we'll kind of get into a bit of a Q&A kind of situation, allow you to talk to the boys about what you want to talk to them about.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and I'm glad everybody's getting their stomach full. I would rather see you that way than grumpy and waiting to go and eat. By the way, I am all in on making this as informative, as practical as possible, and somewhat entertaining. I don't know that I can be as entertaining as our presidential election right now, but I'll do my best. I'll give you a bit of an intro, and I'll give you a list of few things that, when I talked to Mauricio and stepped back 20 years and thought about what are the things I wish I knew at the time, or what are the things that I wish somebody told me, that especially as you transition from college into the rest of your career, there are some things that are so common, and that I'll just do a brain dump and leave you with that, and then we can go into Q&A that works for you guys, and leave as much time as possible.
Yeah.
So a little bit about myself. I am happily married, 20 plus years. My wife is from Iowa. We have 2 kids. My daughter is actually a college rower over at St. Mary's in the Bay Area, and my son is a senior in high school. He's actually a soccer goalkeeper. And we live in Pittsburgh currently. We just moved from Portland, Oregon. I originally was born in Belgrade, what used to be Yugoslavia, and a lot has changed there. Started out playing very competitive tennis in my early career, then moved to soccer, played that at the highest level, and then ended up at JU back in '96. Spent 4 phenomenal years there, and from there transitioned into the rest of my career, and started out with an internship over at what used to be Fidelity National Financial. Now it's called Fidelity Information Services, which is still has a pretty significant presence in Jacksonville from everything I can tell. Then transitioned into healthcare. Our daughter was actually diagnosed with cancer. We had a pretty long battle and successful at the end of the day, but that led me into healthcare. I studied computer information systems. I got into technology right from the get-go, and that stayed throughout. And then went down to Orlando. We moved. I was with Wyndham and then Disney down there in several executive roles, and then moved to Portland, Oregon. So I was there with Nike for about 5 years. And now I'm with Dick's Sporting Goods and leading all the technology for Dick's Sporting Goods. So avid golfer. I picked up golf about 6-7 years ago and got hooked into that sport. Still watch a ton of soccer. Stay close to my son's kind of soccer world, even though he's a goalie and not really a real player. Nothing against goalies, but as you know, we all grew up joking that our kids are never going to be a goalie, and sure enough, I love goalies, by the way. So that's a little bit about myself. As far as few things I'll put out there, and as I drop some of these things in front of you, and as you're chewing on your food or digesting, think about questions, hardest things you can ask me, as far as um, how do you think about your career? How do you transition into corporate or private world? What matters? And are there specific actions you can take right now? And I'll leave you with some, and then if you want to double click into some of that, I'm happy to spend time. But the theme that I actually, and I spend a lot of time talking to my teams on a constant basis. I actually spend a lot of time talking to interns that come. It doesn't matter if it's Disney or Nike or DSG. And quite frankly, every time I talk to them, I had this guilty feeling that I never reconnected with my own school. And so here I am. So thank you for having me. And there are some common things that I see happen there. One of them is you have to own your own career development plan, which is sounds so simple, but it's actually takes some time, takes some effort, and takes knowledge on how to go about it. There's this misnomer that you can just wait for the right organization and the right leaders to go help you develop your plan and think about your growth and promotions and all these other things. Um, and I'm sure in many areas that ultimately will be an input and help. 9 out of 10 times, you have to own that plan. And so I'll explain a little bit about what that means and what each of you can do right now. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman, if you're a senior, how to think about that and how do you actually. It doesn't matter if you want to play professional soccer, if you want to go do technology, if you want to go be a attorney or a doctor or whatever profession you're aspiring to have. And he starts out with the your view on what matters to you. And what I mean by that is you may be studying something right now, you may or may not have a major, you may not be convinced that that's the right major, but there's probably an aspiration or two that you may want to put in front of yourself. And it doesn't mean money or titles or even industry, but something around type of work, type of responsibility that becomes a guiding thing. In addition, one of the hardest things that I've learned in 20 plus years of working with so many folks, leading big teams and small teams, and hearing from what matters to people is this whole concept of establishing your identity and brand, which sounds such a simple thing. It's actually one of the hardest things when I ask, and it doesn't matter if I ask my vice presidents, if I ask my directors or managers or individual contributors, it is the hardest question for them to answer on what is their brand? What do you want your brand to be? And again, it doesn't matter if you're a soccer coach, and I may pick on Mauricio here a little bit as I go through this plan. I'll develop a plan for him for a second, just for the sake of driving some points here. But having a brand that maybe you're a servant leader, maybe it is you want to be known as a innovative thinker. You may want to be known as a disruptive thinker. You may want to be known as someone who is a phenomenal teammate. You may want to be known as someone who's a go-getter, right? And there are many dimensions there that, quite frankly, part of that is your DNA already, and you need to just step back and think about what makes you happy, what's the good energy that you use to when you actually work on in practice, when you work in your schoolwork or any type of a job that you may take on. And that leads you into your strengths and opportunities, which is something that is easy to define. It's really hard to sustain and work on it. And your strengths and opportunities are typically broken in three areas. One is around leadership. And that doesn't mean you need to be a manager of people. That doesn't mean you have to be a coach. That doesn't mean you have to be a leader of others. Each of you are leaders at any given moment, on the field, off the field, with family, with friends, with in your workplace, and just recognizing what are your strengths. Some of you are going to be better at certain soft skills. Some of you are going to be better at leading by example. Some of you are going to be better at other things. You also have opportunities on the leadership side, and they may be active listening. They may be being open-minded. They may be being abrasive, right? So there are a lot of soft things, and I separate leadership from management, and that's a second area that I would leave you with. That I've learned is you don't manage people. You lead people. You manage things. And so managing your priorities, managing your structure, managing the work around you, managing your time, it is extremely important, and it comes easier to some of us and harder for others. And I've seen all kinds of folks do well in the workplace, regardless of their background, as long as they have a plan. And then the third area is this expertise, which again could be soccer coaching, it could be technology, healthcare, any area. And in there, you start to break down what do you understand functionally, what do you understand technically, what do you understand from a process perspective. So if I were to paint a quick picture for Mauricio here and say, and put a quick plan and let me make some stuff up here. My aspiration as Mauricio is to be a national team coach. My brand is to be a servant leader, a disruptive, innovative thinker around the soccer community. I actually want to be known for giving back, and I want to be known as a mentor. My strengths are active listening. My strengths are really keeping up with the greatest in the world of soccer. My strengths are being connected in the network of players and coaches and everybody else. My weaknesses might be I'm impatient. My weaknesses are I come to a quick judgment. My weaknesses, and by the way, I'm making all this up. So if some of you are smirking there, making faces, this is not pre-scripted. And I talked to Mauricio for about 30 minutes, so I'm just making this up. But you'll be also amazed how many folks struggle with the same thing, no matter what profession they're in. And the sooner you recognize what matters, the better you are. And so you get the point around this. So think about each of you developing a plan. And I'll share the template that I've developed over the years that I use to this day for myself and for others. It's a very simple spreadsheet that you can start. And in there, it's one thing to define what you want to work on what you want to continue to evolve as your strength. It's another thing to start to define tactics and action items. And who is your trusted advisor around that? So if Mauricio needs to improve his active listening, as an example, he may choose to watch a TEDx or read a book or sit down with the athletic director who may be really good at it, or have a group of you on the field who captains, for example, that can give him feedback behind the closed door when some things are not happening the way. And so it's establishing that vulnerability and that transparency that really helps you excel. Very few folks um, um, take time. Very few folks put effort in to develop their destiny to some extent. I can tell you many of these things that I just shared with you. If you're recognized in the work environment, and I've been fortunate to be in many different work environments, and some would argue some of the most desirable companies you want to work for there. And every place has its own good, bad, and ugly. It's up to you to figure out what matters to you, how do you improve, and let the good prevail. So with that, that's a bit of a framework that I'll leave you with. I don't want to get too theoretical here. I'm sharing the actual plans that I'm now working. As I joined Dick's Sporting Goods 6 months ago, I've developed a plan like this for every one of my VPs that report to me, for every director that reports to them. And so it's a real thing that has happened in 3 or 4 companies that I was at. What are the things that I wish I was told when I was in your shoes? And I'll start out with internship. The more you can get practical experience, and that doesn't mean you don't pursue your professional soccer dream or any of that. The reality is most of you will transition to some other career, and the more you go into that with practical knowledge, the better you're set up for success. I didn't know that. I happened to take internship by accident. It made a world of difference. And now when I see a ton of applicants that are coming into no matter which company, many of them have phenomenal grades and pedigrees from top schools in the country. When it comes down to practical knowledge, it's more important than ever. And I will always select a person with background in something that practically has been done versus a theoretical academic thing. With that, I will also tell you, I get asked often, oh, you went to JU. Most people haven't heard much about JU. How were you able to? At first, I never thought about it. I never knew any difference. I just thought college is college. I did learn later on that some things differ and matter, but none of that actually stopped me because I had few things going on for me. One, I was a student athlete, which, by the way, 9 out of 10 situations in the real world, your learnings from the field, your learnings from Mauricio and the coaching staff, both good and bad, are priceless. Most kids come out of school thinking they know more than they actually do. Which leads me to another thing that I'll leave you with. When you go into that interview or conversation or exploratory opportunity, just have that humble confidence. I guarantee you, each of you have confidence, just the fact that you're playing Division I soccer. Just be humble about what you know, what you don't. There's a big difference to those, and it's a massive character flaw that I see all the time. Doesn't matter if it's a 30-year veteran in the career or if it's somebody brand new out of college or high school. Those that are humble about and are able to learn quickly win at the end of the day. So I wouldn't stress out of the fact that you might not know everything. I wouldn't stress out that you may not have a 4.0. I wouldn't stress out that you're coming out of JU versus Stanford. If you're connected, and that's one thing I'll offer to each of you, if I can help in any way, if I can connect you, if I can put you in touch, if I can help you develop your career development plan in any way, or just be a sounding board, I'm all in. I'll leave you with one last thing, and then maybe you turn into Q&A. Networking is so crucial And these days you have things that we didn't have 20 years ago, and that's social media. And there's ways to do it in the right way, and there's ways to expose yourself. Be proactive in terms of connecting with people that you may know or people that you may not know, but you want to know. Take an extra step, and I'll challenge each of you to reach out to me or other alumni. You had a chance, I saw you talk to Frank a few weeks back. Frank is one of the finest people you'll find on this earth, and he's open and waiting for every one of you if you want to talk to him. Take advantage of that. He gave me advices more than I ever realized what it really meant. So I would just say take advantage of alumni. I know you have a community there that's available, and I know just from my generation, there are folks in Jacksonville and other areas that are willing to step in and help at any given point. So just take advantage of that. And for those of you that are international students, I myself went through a journey that didn't really know how to shape that methodically. I was passionate about soccer. I was hoping things just happen as I went, and I was fortunate. I was fortunate to get into a company that was very supportive of sponsoring. I ended up being ultimately getting engaged and married to my wife is from Iowa, but I've supported so many international candidates that came into any one of the companies I was at, and being part of the company that actually supports that, they can actually help you with citizenship. They can help you with status, and all of that is a huge, huge deal. And so take that into account as you move forward if you desire to stay in US itself. So those are some of the things that I would just that was my brain dump on that I wish someone told me, that would give me a little bit of confidence and get a little bit of a light in some areas. And so I'll pause at that and see if there are any questions or thoughts or things you want to hear more about. I'm happy to zoom in or double click on anything I've shared there. And hopefully you had a chance to finish your food by now too, so I'm not interrupting too much by asking. So let me pause in that and see if there are any questions or Mauricio, anything else you believe I should share or cover with the team?
No, I think this is a good spot. I think you shared a lot of good content here, and you can really, like you said, you can double click on several different things to kind of tap into. So I'll start with one, and then the guys can lead in if anything was more interested. And then if the guys had questions about your career at JU and kind of how that propelled you as well. Just one thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning. Vlad was part of probably the most successful era of JU soccer. It was highly international, a lot of Eastern Europeans, as you mentioned, Yugoslavian, a lot of Brazilians, some older players, but JU during his time made it into the Sweet 16, beating some pretty tough opponents, and eventually made it to the second round again. So there's a lot of takeaways just from his overall experience and what that meant to him career-wise. And I'll let you guys ask about that. But one thing that I was interested in, we do something that we call our PDP, our personal development plan here. And we really start out with the freshmen, introduce it to them. I'm going through that with a lot of the freshmen at the moment. And it's a lot of what you're talking about, developing an action plan, right? What are the resources they use? And a lot of the SMART goals that, a lot of them have done in high school as well, but it's very soccer specific. So you're also suggesting that they do a personal specific that's not just, soccer related, but it's for them. And you encourage your employees to do that, and something you take them through a training program. How often would you say that needs to be redone or updated as they go through their career? And looking at our guys, how often should our freshmen and our sophomores and juniors during their career be looking to upgrade their development plan as they learn, as they evolve and want to tack on different things?
Yeah, so I'll begin with that. Those plans there's the skeleton of the plan that doesn't change often, because your aspiration may change at some point, your strengths may evolve, your weaknesses, so the opportunities that you're working on are are evolving, but the skeleton is there. It's all about how often are you reviewing this with somebody. And so what we do in the workplace, it's actually a monthly thing that we do. And I will leave it up to the individual of what exactly do they want to cover. So if my role as a leader there is sometimes just to listen, sometimes to suggest actions they can take. And so part of this plan that I'll share with you actually goes into, if I take something like active listening, or in your case, I'll actually pick something on the soccer side. So let's say you need to get better at crossing, right? If let's say um, you're struggling with crossing, and that's a big part of your role or position you play on the team, you may define crossing as an area that you want to develop. There's many actions you can take, all the way from what you do in practice, what you do in the game, what you do individually to watch, what you do physically to actually improve. Um, and so for each of those, you can define specific action item. How do you measure it? So if you don't, there's a old saying that you don't manage thing that you don't measure. It's extremely hard. And so part of this is going to be very important for you to identify not only necessarily maybe a coach, but maybe some teammates that can give you real-time feedback and pointers. That you come after out of practice and said, out of the 27 crosses that I made today, 15 were good. Um, Here's what I struggled with as far as I make a direct run at that ball versus make a circular run to actually do that. I actually don't slow down, or I don't make extra small steps. So there are things that you capture that are so important that when you sit down with your coach on a monthly or every or quarterly basis or whatever makes sense from a frequency, you actually talk through it and you become vulnerable around what's really happening and seeking input. And so on one end, having a small group of folks on the team that can give you instant feedback, all the way to coaches who are actually evaluating and helping you at the same time, that is so important. And then you set a goal to say, in 6 months, I want to do this as far as crossing is considered. Then in 12 months, I want to be able to do this with both of my feet, right, or legs. So it's a very specific plan, and I'm calling this out that in ultimately in the corporate world, if you don't get actionable, if you don't get measured, and if you don't have the surrounding of people around you to hold you accountable to it, it just becomes a great conversation. And just knowing that you should be better at crossing gets you only so far. Being very specific and diligent around it is what makes a difference. And that's how you differentiate yourself from good to great. So that would be my 2 cents on the plan. And then I think when I send you the example, you'll see kind of how you can extrapolate that and actually use it in any way. As far as my learnings from JU career, it was an interesting time because we went from, just a little bit of history. When I joined, we had a fairly international team. We had a good team. But it wasn't great team my first year. My second year, and at the time, the coach that came in was very good at recruiting. Some would argue that too good at recruiting, that led into some things that were not necessarily legal, as we all learned later on some of the things. I'm being transparent, but putting that aside, we had we've elevated from being a average school to a probably individually the best team in Division One, and we didn't know that we were the best. And looking back, part of my takeaways here, what I'll share with you is enjoy the moments of learning, enjoy the moments of joy, enjoy the moments of success, and stretch yourself. I can tell you the difference between good and great is so small in Division One. And as you all know, if you hold each other's hand and you joint in the hip as a team, you can do a ton of damage there. We weren't as strong as a team. We had the strongest individuals by probably a lot. Because we by one point we had 8 or 9 of us that played for under 21 national teams, and individually we were very strong. I think Duke was ranked #1, and we beat him at Duke. Got cocky. We were not fit. So one thing I will leave you with: you can be as good as you want. If you're not fit, forget about it. And Maryland kicked our ass. They had 8 under 21 U.S. team players. They were not that skilled. They outran us. They lost to Duke 5-0 that season. We beat Duke. We showed up. We thought we had everybody, and all of us wish we could go back. So there was a ton of things that we in practice didn't do as much as we should. So that extra effort, I know that sounds cheesy, and I'm sure you're hearing from Mauricio and the coaching staff all the time. I'm telling you, if you don't give 110%, you're not going to get better. And by the way, that's exactly what happens later on in the world. And I can tell I say the same thing to my kids. I sound super old right now too. You're going to get whatever you put in. And I can tell you right away, those that show up in the workplace, you can tell who gives 100% and those that are trying to skate just because they may have extra skill or they can juggle the ball a little better. And helping each other, because I did watch your game the other day, and I saw a couple of times where I don't know exactly the names or numbers, and I don't want to call anybody out. I saw situations where some of you are getting pissed because somebody that was on the second team was going hard after you. Those are the moments where you turn around and you help them and you support them instead of getting pissed. The moments of you learning from each other, they go by fast. And the times you have right now are probably going to be some of the more enjoyable as far as not having as much responsibility, having a lot of fun, having a lot of joy. So if I go back to what I learned there, there is don't take things for granted, go hard in practice and stay fit. And I can guarantee you, if we were fit, we probably would have won the whole thing. It would have been hard for us to lose there. And that was the reason. And so, as Mauricio said, there was a special times at the time. We had a really good set of individuals. We all didn't appreciate it. So enjoy those moments and recognize who you have next to you. I think you guys have as I looked at each of your backgrounds, as I studied your bios, you have a group that's forming. As I watch what happened over the last 4 or 5 years, this group is growing into a very diverse group. And if you hold hands and if you are staying fit, you can do a lot of damage.
Hey, Vlad, that's really good. Any of the guys want to have anything directly to Vlad?
Anything goes except for politics, sex, and religion. So feel free to throw anything my way.
Vlad, so I'm one of the coaches, but I wanted to ask a question to you that I think everybody's got on their mind. So it's a question for myself, but also for everyone else. What was it like working for Nike?
Nike was a special place, and in so many ways. It was funny because when I joined Disney, everyone thought that was one of the greatest, if not the greatest company to work for. My Disney was actually Nike. And so when I actually switched from Disney to Nike, and I had the same role, I was a chief technology officer in Disney, and I moved to Nike in the same role. And a lot of people looked at me funny, or like, why would you leave Disney? Um, and this, what that told me and what I felt was when you are in this place where you're surrounded by sports and it was my passion. Sports is my passion. And it's so much easier for me. It doesn't matter that I was doing the same type of work, which is technology. I was surrounded by mission, vision statements, former athletes, uh, existing athletes. So I was fortunate to, in my town halls, to have anywhere from Michael Jordan's to Rory McIlroy's to national team coaches, and we were connected there. So it was a very special place from um, being on the same mission, vision. The other thing about Nike, Nike is super innovative. And it's known for its innovative product, and it's known for also storytelling. And that's one thing that I took away from both Disney and Nike, some of the best storytelling companies in the world, which taught me on how to tell the story, which is really important. You could be really good at something if you don't tell that story, if you're not able to set the context. So those are some of the big learnings there. Nike also, like any other big company, gives you so much opportunity to go into so many different roles and learn. And I can tell you, students coming in as for internship, they were like kids in the candy shop, especially those that were athletes. And so, by the way, I have left on really good terms there. If I can help in any way and connect you, I have a ton of friends and leaders there that they have a massive internship program. So does Disney. So does DSG. And by the way, after Nike, I went to Merck, and this brought me back into me trying to leave a mark in this world and go in the world of cancer treatments with my daughter's background and everything. And I just could not connect with chemistry and biology as much as I wanted to make the difference in the world. And so I actually went to Dick's Sporting Goods because it was about sports. And what we're about to do is going to transform the experience. It's not going to be as much about retail as it is about um, sensors and technology. We're actually working on soccer right now where you will have a sensor on every joint, and it come to the next generation stores where you have ability to um, compare yourself to the pro athletes, compare yourself to your improvements, bring in a whole different level of your 360 view as an athlete and performance. And so that sold me, that vision and mission there sold me on coming back to sports. And so I didn't mean to derail us from Nike conversation, but point being here is chase your passion, stay with what gets you going in the morning.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Connor, you had a question?
So my question was, what made you get into like the tech aspect right out of college? Like what made you go to that route other than doing something else, I guess, like in finance or other business aspects? Why'd you choose tech?
Yeah, I actually got into tech very early in my life. Which is kind of somewhat unique, you could argue, even though you see more and more of that these days. And I'll tell you about the tech in a second, because tech is misunderstood from everything I can see. My high school in Belgrade was a computer sciences high school while I was playing, and so when I came to JU, it was a bit natural there, and so I just continued with that path post JU, so somewhat easier. I also will tell you one of the big things that I hear a lot is this anxiety of, well, I studied such and such, and I'm kind of feeling stuck because the jobs, there might not be as many jobs, or you might not be as well paying, or it may be hard to get into. It's more than ever where there's so much diversity in so many professions that is present, where it doesn't really matter what your background is. And I'll give you an example with technology. Technology has evolved into many different areas where in some areas you may have to have that programming and software engineering background that's very geeky and techy, and that's where I grew up. Many of the areas are very much business focused. So, for example, in my organizations, we don't just do technology, we do product management. So you get to define from a business perspective, what should that experience look like in the mobile app around that soccer experience that I just talked about, or golf, or fitness, or basketball. You get to design what that flow of experience it is. You may be doing analytics, defining what are the insights. And oh, by the way, for that product management role, for that design role, for that analytics role, you don't need a technology background. You can be in the business degree, you can be in communications degree, you can be in the design degree, you can be in many others. The key is to be open-minded on, and this is back to your career development plan and recognizing what are the areas you could ultimately get into. And there are some of you may be studying something specialized, such as law or health, right? Where it creates a little bit more of a challenging environment and where you can all go or that. But for many of you, I can tell you right now, there's probably 80% of population in my entire organization. It's not just at DSG, but I can look at Nike or Disney and Merck, and I had 4,000 people in my organization in Merck, and 80% of them didn't have a technology degree. They were in technology organization. So be open-minded on and feel comfortable that it's okay if you may be studying something right now, be open to shifting as long as you have practical back knowledge established through internship. So that networking and connecting with the right people that can put you in the position to learn and being open to learning is very important. So my scenario is a little bit unique, but I speak on behalf of many cases that I see now. And I don't ever take a resume for those that apply for a job and look at, oh, what's your degree in? Or it's all about what have you done? How fast can you learn? Especially coming out of college. Nobody really knows much coming out of college. And it's all about how quickly can you learn? And how good of a teammate are you? How much can you bring in that drive for results and that passion that you have on the soccer field that made you a Division I player there? And those are the X factors that most students coming out of college don't have, that you guys got to have an advantage. So take advantage of that.
Thank you. I was just curious because I'm currently doing analytics. So I was curious as to why you chose that particular field and what kind of drove that factor. So thank you.
Yeah, it's, by the way, one of the, if you were to ask me, and I did the same thing with my daughter because she was unclear what she wanted to do. And I reverse engineer her DNA a little bit and what matters and things that she's good at or not. She's studying data analytics right now, but not from a tech side. It's more from a business side. By the way, it's the area that I would, 9 out of 10 times, I suggest anybody that wants to deal with problem solving and some kind of a logic, that's the place to go. I'm hiring college students at $80,000, $90,000 out of school into that area. It is the biggest area of demand and supply. And I guarantee you, most of you can, and I'm not suggesting that all of you do this, you got to find your passion, but it's, if someone told me this 20 years ago, I would tell them you're crazy, because everyone looked at it through this technology lens. And the analytics and data has really become what everybody, including our elections, are all about data analytics. And so everything we do, and I'll bet you coaching staff here is doing more analytics now than ever before. And so that's one space. If you happen to be unsure, I would ask you to maybe think about it, and I'll be happy to follow up with any of you and give you more insights into what to study, because you don't need a ton of specific classes to come out of and be comfortable stepping into and be successful. And in an area there's a ton of demand, ton of jobs, extremely well paid, and every company does it.
Great. Vlad, I'll ask one kind of closing question here. Not to rush the answer by any means, but just so we can start putting a bowl on this. Obviously, you learn a lot through your experiences. You learn a lot through making mistakes, and some of those you need through the process in order to strengthen you. But if you were to look back and you're looking at some mistakes that maybe you could have avoided in order to accelerate your growth and accelerate your career, which ultimately everybody wants to, without forgetting that mistakes do strengthen you and they do improve you. Well, what is something that you would kind of leave with as guys from an accelerating your process and mistakes that they don't have to go through, that they could learn from others in order to kind of just take that next step forward, so they're not feeling like they're falling behind at any point?
That's a phenomenal question. And I'll go back for a second just to what I shared with you earlier to help you create an environment where you can constantly recognize your mistakes, because being self-aware is one of the hardest things. And if you go back to that career development plan or the PDP that coaching staff has with you, having the forum where you can actually recognize your mistakes and be able to talk about it with coaching staff talking to you with the good intent, you knowing that the only way to get better is knowing where you're making mistakes, is priceless. So use that platform, use that plan, use that forum to continuously talk about it, because that is one of the hardest things for us as humans to accept. And it gets a lot easier when you have a structure and a framework. So I wish I had a PDP when I was playing. I wish I had, and mistakes that I made, so back to specific mistakes, I did not reach out to my teammates and my coaches to get their feedback nearly as much. I was waiting for them to tell me instead of me asking them. And in this world, people will share if you reach out to them. Many of them are not comfortable sharing unless they know that you're open to it. So that would be one thing. The second mistake that I made a lot of mistakes, by the way. I made a lot of mistakes by being stubborn on what my paradigm and what my perception of a problem or a solution is. And it doesn't matter if that was me being stuck and stubborn or what somebody on the field was trying to do, or what somebody in the corporate world on the team was struggling with, and I just didn't see it. If I could go back in my playing days and do one thing different, I would actually have a candid and open conversation with at least a group of players that are surrounding my position to understand what they prefer, how they think on the field, knowing, and as you know, the game is played off the ball, and it's the hardest part of the game is playing off the ball. And the more moves you make off the ball, the better you play as a team. That's really hard to read, especially for those of you that are newer to the team and haven't played around. And so the more you can talk to each other, which may sound, it may sound pity, it may sound strange, and weird, but it's probably one of the best things you can do that is hard to establish on the team. And if each of you become vulnerable, especially those of you that are captains, if you can set the stage, if you become vulnerable and learn how others around you, what they need from you, how they think around you, you're going to be better as a team. There's only so much coaches can see. There's only so much they can foresee or intuitively pick up on. You guys spend much more time among yourselves than you do with coaches. And so, and you will not always agree with each other. Not everybody needs to like everybody. But for the most part, everyone wants to win. And for the most part, you're going to find a group of players that you hang out and that you trust, and you can have fun and joke and mess around and make mistakes, but you also can learn from each other. And that's the difference between those that continue that in the later on in their career, and those that are successful from those that are not, and those that emerge into leaders versus those that are just stuck in their own way of doing things. So that's something that I made mistakes. I learned from it, and I was fortunate to be vulnerable. And to this day, I lead with that vulnerability. And it's probably that from all those mistakes that ultimately hit me.
Man, that's fantastic. I mean, you have given us a dump of knowledge, and you kind of just unloaded on us. And there's so many different takeaways that we're hopefully, don't expect everyone to remember all of them or to carry all of them. But if there's something here that you guys have heard, I really recommend that you do exactly what Vlad just said there at the end. Talk to each other. So when you get off this call, I know you have things to do and you got places to go, but do a little debrief. Guys that are in your rooms together, if you guys are around each other, what did Vlad talk about tonight that made sense to you, or just intrigued your mind that you want to discover a little bit more on, or maybe you didn't agree with something, but at least start the conversation. Don't go through these experiences. And I know we've had a few of these before, and not all of them, hit the target. But I think this one did, and I think this one is extremely relatable to you guys in your process and where you are. It connected to where you want to get to. And I love how you say, regardless of what career path you choose, whether it's in technology, professional soccer, or the corporate world, or whatever dimension, these are tools that you can use, and you can start using them now. You don't have to wait until you get there, stumble a few times, feel lost, for them to learn the hard way. Start learning now. Start leaning to one another now, and leaning to some of these advices that you're getting from people that are experienced, mean well, and want to see your success. I'm sure he had better things to do last Friday than to watch a inter squad game on a choppy field, but he cares, and he stayed there and watched you guys. And he probably, if he knew your names, he probably would have called you out, and because that's what being an alumni is, and that's what having passion for your program is. So I'll leave with that, Vlad. Thank you. I think it was extremely beneficial to the guys, certainly for the coaching staff. I'm taking notes because I think learning is something that you never stop doing, and you should never stop doing. So I really appreciate you sharing with the guys. Thank you for making yourself available. I do encourage you guys to reach out if it's okay with you, and if you have a preferred email or contact number that you would like me to share with the guys. I know some of them like reaching out, so I hope you guys do. Tap into his resources. I think we grow in life so that we can give back. So whether it's a Nike or Dick's Sporting Goods or a Disney, whatever it might be, or just from a mentor standpoint, someone that you can have as a sounding board, as you mentioned, please step in. Don't let these moments pass by, because we didn't get this, he didn't get it, and some of us had to learn things the harder way, and we want better for you, which is why we're doing this. So I appreciate the attention for the guys. I know it's a long day, and I know we do this often, so it seems like it's repetitive, but it's always different and it's always new. But there's a lot of consistency to excellence and consistency to success. Hey, there are no shortcuts. You have to outwork. But more than anything, what I loved about this one, you have to find your passion. Be passionate about what you want to do. Outwork the competition. Don't make any excuses, and look to grow. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, but that's where you benefit the most. So Vlad, thank you so much. Thanks to the guys. I'll record this. What has been recorded, I'll send it back out to you. So if you want to share with your former alumni, with any friends, we want to continue to grow our community and our alumni base.
Thank you for having me. I hope to see you guys soon in person. I wish you all the best sounds like you may be having your season in the spring there. I'll send my contact info. I encourage you to reach out. I'll send that career development plan example. If I can help with anything else, just please let me know. So thank you. And enjoy.
Thank you so much. All the best to your family as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.